my on-off?
Okay, you're good to go.
All right, I guess. Hello, hello. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your time and your energy to be in this shared space. We are here for the storytellers tonight. We're also here for Pridefest and for Laramie's LGBTQ plus community. So thank you for being here and showing your support. My name is Rose. I'm the event organizer, and I will be your host this evening. I'm going to guide you through what tonight is going to look like. We're going to hear from 2 storytellers, and then we'll have a brief intermission where we will hear from 2 representatives of Laramie Pridefest. After that, we'll hear 2 more stories, and then we'll conclude, hopefully, with an impromptu story from somebody in the audience tonight. So, if the theme is inspiring to you, which is called to action, courage, and community, or if any of the stories you hear tonight are inspiring as well, then I lovingly and courageously encourage you to write your name down on a slip of paper, which is located in kind of this midway corner where the table is with the floral on it. And yeah, we'll just do a random drawing, and that's how we'll conclude the night. Okay. Before we kick off with stories, I do want to thank Linda of Divine Eats and the volunteer crew. Thank you for not only showing your support for this event and Laramie Pridefest, but for Laramie's community inside and out. Thank you. Okay. And also, thank you to Coal Creek Tap for the beer we've been enjoying tonight. With that, I am very honored to introduce to you our first storyteller, Huli. You want to come up front? Huli uses he, him, his pronouns and is coming up on his 3rd year in Laramie. He spends his off time taking pictures, reading, and trying new recipes. In his on time, he provides mental health therapy to students at the University of Wyoming and at his private practice. Thank you, Huli.
Think that works?
That's good.
Yes. Yes.
This can go up.
Cool. Okay. Please don't fall. So I grew up a very frightened child in a fractured family. And if you know anything about panic or anxiety, you know that an anxious child and a fractured family, they're not a good combination. And I was particularly afraid of one family member who I'm not going to name, but if they're watching this, they'll figure out who they are. And I was very frightened of this family member ever since I was a little kid when they yelled at me for being or acting too girly. They have this voice, very, very loud, like this without a microphone, and it like just cuts deep. And so she yells at me, and I shrunk, and I felt so afraid to disappoint her and so terrified and so scared that I grew up lovingly being afraid of this person. And I recognize that now, and I heard it a second time when I finished college, and one afternoon I'm at home, relaxing, I get this letter, big letter, looks like a big bow, and it says something like, "You're amazing, darling." And it's from this family member, and the content of the letter is not the same as the cover. And so don't ever do that. If you write someone a letter, make sure that the content matches the cover, because this letter didn't say how amazing I was. It said how ashamed they were, how angry the family was, how much people were upset with me for leaving home, for not having children, for not being married, for pursuing my education, for doing my own thing. And again, I shrunk like a little kid, and I found myself frozen. And I couldn't move. And I couldn't move for a long time, but eventually I did move. I moved to Laramie. Shout out Laramie. It'll be 3 years in August. And I've done a lot since I've been here. I protested, I've met some great people, I've volunteered for Laramie Pridefest. I've been able to shout out Black Lives Matter, that trans lives matter, that racism is bad, and that mental health is good, and therapy is good. And so I think about all of these things and all the things that I've done, and I decided to write my own letter this time, back to the whole family, about all the things that I've done, all the people that I've met, all the people that I've gotten to know, who I've become, who I've been, and who I'm gonna be. I wrote about my sexuality, about the protesting, about the coal rolling, about the counter-protesters, all of these different things. And then I get, and then I wait. I wait for this person to write me back, and then they did. And in my voice, I hear that same, in my head, I hear that same voice that I heard when I was a kid. And the letter said, and this is how it sounded to me, even though this is not what they wrote exactly. How could you protest? All lives matter. Queer rights don't matter. You're going to be a shame to the family. You're going to embarrass yourself. You're going to get in trouble. And as a psychologist, they're going to disown you. And so I hear all these things. I read all these things. But this time I don't shrink. I don't feel bad, I don't feel scared, because at that moment I realized I don't care about disappointing this person or anybody else at this point, because I like who I am, I like who I'm becoming, and I like the people that I met and the things that I've done. And more importantly, I like disappointing people when it means I get to have the courage to do what I care about. So, thanks.
Thank you, Huli. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I did forget to mention that there might be some difficult content mentioned in different stories this evening, and we do have a clinical therapist here, Dr. Kilwain. Right up front. Great. So people can see your face too. She is here to debrief after the event if you want to chat with her really about anything. So thank you, Tess, for offering those services. Okay, thanks again, Huli. Okay. Our second storyteller is Andrew, if you want to come up front. This one is a little different for you, and I'm really excited for Andrew's story. Okay, so Kearns or Kern? Kern. Okay. Andrew Kern is an 18-year-old transgender man who recently graduated high school here at LHS. Instead of the usual tale, he will be performing a piece called Nanette by Hannah Gadsby, and will share about what this piece means to him as a queer person.
Hi guys, my name is Andrew. Like she said, I am a recent graduate. I came out as transgender, it's almost hitting 3 years now. Wow, that's a long time. Basically, I've also been doing speech and debate, and in speech and debate, I heard someone's speech and debate. So yeah, I've been doing speech and debate for 4 years, and so we choose pieces that mean a lot to us. And so as I've developed and become what I am now, I have chosen a lot of queer pieces. And I saw this show on Netflix called Nanette, and it was by Hannah Gadsby, who identifies as a lesbian, uses she, her pronouns, and she was talking about all these different things, and it was very funny, but then at the end it got very serious, and I thought, this is so cool, this would be such a good piece. And so yeah, it really shows just how dangerous it is to be in this society as someone who's different. Even in like my own house, I have felt very endangered because of who I was. So yeah, it's just very hard to be a queer person in this world at some point. So yeah, this is kind of what this piece is about. And also trigger warning, there is the F slur. If anyone is not comfortable with that word, that is totally fine. So yeah, here goes nothing. Welcome to my show. My show is called Nanette, and the reason I called my show Nanette is because I named it before I wrote it. See, I named it around the time I met a woman called Nanette, and I met her in a small town cafe. And I was talking to her, you could say flirting, and all of a sudden this man comes up to me and he starts shoving me going, "Oh, keep away from my girlfriend, you freak." And then she steps in going, "Oh, no, stop it, it's a girl." And then he steps in going, oh, sorry. I don't hit women. Number one, I don't hit women. How about you don't hit anyone? Good rule of thumb. Two, it's a girl. Now I understand that I have this responsibility to help lead people out of ignorance at every single opportunity that I possibly can. But I left them there, people. Safety first. Safety first. And I'm from a small town, a very small town, and I don't feel very comfortable in a small town. I get a bit tense, mainly because in a small town, from a distance, people are like, "Oh, look at him, good bloke," and then they get up close and they're like, "Oh, you're a trickster woman, what are you doing?" So yeah, I get a lot of side eye. So yeah, I feel quite tense in a small town. I got a letter on Facebook recently, and I say letter because, I'm just so controversial, but that's just what I say. And it said, "Dear Hannah, new line, you owe it to your community to come out as transgender." Now, all jokes aside, I really want to do best by my community. I really, really do. But that was news to me. Clearly I am gender not normal, but I don't fit very neatly into categories. But I may as well just come out now. I identify as tired. I'm just so tired. Seriously though, there is too much hysteria around gender from all of you gender normals. Seriously, calm down. Get a grip. Oh, a man in a dress? That's weird. No, it's not. It is weird? Pink headbands on bald babies. That's weird. Seriously, would you put a bangle on a potato? They say that laughter is the best medicine. I don't. I reckon penicillin might be the best medicine. There is some truth to it, though. Laughter is very good for the human because when you laugh, you release tension. And a joke is a question that creates tension. That's my job. I make you feel tense and I make you laugh, and you're like, "Oh, thanks for that. I was feeling a bit tense." But the thing is, I just made you tense. This, let's face it, it's an abusive relationship. And, do you know why I'm funny? Do you? It's because I've been learning the art of tension diffusion ever since I was a child. But back then, it wasn't a job. Oh no, I didn't have to create the tension. I was the tension. And, I'm getting tired of tension. Tension is making me sick. So, I have to quit comedy. I know it's probably not the forum to make such an announcement in the middle of a comedy show, but, I just don't feel very comfortable in it anymore, because I feel like in a comedy show, there's no room for the best part of the story, which is the ending. I've been telling my story through jokes. And stories, unlike jokes, need a beginning, middle, and end. Jokes only need a beginning and a middle. And what I had done was I froze an incredibly formative experience at its trauma point and sealed it off. Punchlines need trauma because trauma feeds tension, and tension feeds trauma. I need to tell my story properly. Do you remember in the beginning when I told you about that man who almost beat me up? Yeah, it was a very funny story about his ignorance. And the reason that I could do that is because I didn't tell the story as it actually happened. Because I couldn't tell you the part of the story where
Okay, we're back, we're back. As you start to find your seat and minimize the chatter, Ammon with Wyoming Equality is going to make a quick announcement as some info cards are passed out to you in your seats. And then right after, Huli and Naomi, if you could come up front so you can take the stand after Ammon.
I can't believe it. Hello, I'm Ammon Medina. First, thank you so much to tell the Taphouse and Laramie Pridefest. This is awesome Pride. I'm so happy to be with real people again. Yeah. All right. I'm just making a real quick announcement. Wyoming Equality has been working on healthcare access. LGBTQ people have a ton of barriers facing them when it comes to receiving equitable healthcare that is consistent with, straight white people. So, cis straight white people. And so this survey is gonna help us identify those barriers. We're building a resource list. It's gonna be a great tool for us to advocate with legislators, with administrators, with people across all fields. So we're passing out these cards. There's a QR code. Just load it and take it when we're done, giving our full attention to the storytellers. I don't wanna, yeah, okay. I know screens are literally programmed to take your attention, but fight it, please. Okay, so yeah, just snag it. Thank you so much. We're gonna be passing them around. If you don't get one, the banner over here has a QR code, so you can snag it on the way out. Good luck, storytellers.
Okay, next up is Naomi, board director of Laramie Pridefest, and Huli, who's going to speak on behalf of the volunteers.
So, again, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. We want to encourage you to come to all the rest of our events this week. There's going to be lots of events tomorrow, both virtual and in person. We are always looking for volunteers, so please hit up LaramiePridefest@gmail.com. Make sure to look at our website, LaramiePridefest.com, for all information, including some really great events about consent, about protecting yourself from ICE. ICE isn't to cool your drink, it's about Immigration and Customs Enforcement, so information there, the bad ICE, if you will. And also about the burlesque show that's happening on Friday here. And so, am I missing anything else?
We'll have a pony at Pride in the Park. Complete with unicorn horn.
So yes, please come out to Pride at the Park. It's going to be happening at Washington Park. It's going to be following the proclamation in March on Saturday as well. And so all the information is not only on their Pride Fest Facebook, but also on the website. Once again, LaramiePridefest.com, all one word. And yes, please volunteer. We need lots of them. So thanks.
All right, thank you so much. I love Laramie Pridefest. I feel like they're maybe one of the top 3 mover and shaker organizations in Laramie. So thank you for all the hard work and for all the work you're doing to change policy here in Laramie. Thank you so much. Kat Smith is our next storyteller. Okay. Right. Kat is a queer, neurodiverse open book. In life, her focus is making a positive impact on the lives of others through connection, community, and music, no matter the genre or level of experience. She strives to be innovative and multidisciplinary, so as to be a more holistic collaborator and contributing member of society. A professional classical musician and pedagogue, she also has an extensive background as a singer-songwriter and yoga and meditation instructor. Intersectional activism has become a bit of a focal point as she looks to the future and continues to listen and grow.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose, for all that you've done to help organize this, and thanks to everyone for being here. I'm Kat, and the mic is hot. I use she, her pronouns, just an FYI. And about 2 years ago, almost exactly, I was in Denver doing a yoga teacher training for educators with 65 amazing women. It wasn't the plan for it to be all women, it just happened that way. And it was a really beautiful experience for many reasons, one of which was that every single one of these 65 women showed up every single 11-hour day ready to be open and vulnerable and make amazing connections. And so when I looked into their eyes, I saw straight into their soul, and I saw beauty and power. And I also amazingly saw myself and my own beauty and power reflected in their faces. So one of these days happened to be Denver Pride, and I don't know if you heard the part about 11-hour days, but I was not going to Pride that day. So instead, I brought Pride to the yoga teacher training, and I decked myself out in my rainbows, and I got my flag, and I came in, and I was like, Happy Pride! Happy Pride! Hey, Happy Pride! Woo! With my gay self, and if it wasn't clear to them then. So I go in, we settle in for some asana and for some pranayama and some meditation, and then we start our day. And the theme of that day happened to be diversity, just serendipity, oh my. And what this training at least did was design experiences so that we would excavate the things in our psyche and our soul that kind of needed to be examined in our own lives and in our own inner worlds. And so we started to do that, and I realized I was starting to feel kind of sad and heavy. And I realized it was also for many reasons. And the first that came to me is that for the first time in my life, I was acknowledging that I personally am changed day to day because of the fact that society doesn't always respond to queer people. Now look, I have a lot of privilege, look at me. I've got a lot of privilege, but I finally was like, oh, I guess I have this too. And it made me sad. And then I also realized, looking around the room, that I was the only person in the room who had come out to the entire group. And so as far as I knew, I was the only queer person, only LGBTQIA+ person in the room. And I suddenly, despite the fact that all of these women knew I was queer and loved me, not despite the fact that I was queer, I suddenly felt alone. I was decked out in rainbows, like practically bleeding rainbow all over the place, and I felt like this rainbow island of isolation. I felt a little silly because of how wonderful the space was, but when it came time to share, I shared how I felt and how if I can feel that alone in that safe of a space, no wonder our youth, our LGBTQIA+ youth, and really anyone in our world feels so alone and has such a shitty mental health track record and broken homes and just struggle to live in society. So then we continued our day, and we did some more exercises and some more stuff. And again, yoga is sort of designed to shake up the trauma in your body so it can go out and do what it needs to do. But on that day, that was a little much for me because I was still processing. So I stepped out, I did some laps, and I ran into the head teacher trainer of that training, whose name was Rachel. And she was like, what's up? Why are you not in training? And with her help and through our conversation, I realized that I was also sort of struggling with the fact that we have what we lovingly call this alphabet soup, LGBTQIA, and then plus, because we need that plus, because we are discovering more nuances within this wonderful spectrum. We have all these spectrums, this menagerie of spectrums that have an insane amount of depth and breadth and layers, and they're intersectional, but they're not mutually exclusive, and blah, 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 blah. And then we have a wall, and then they're straight. And there's a lot to unpack there, and in my practicing this, I was like, unpack, and then I was like, oh, it's a 17-minute story. Okay, so I'll let you sit with that. But I basically said to my friend, why does straight have to be kind of a limiting, even more limiting than labels already are? And why can't we have that, allow that to be part of that spectrum? And she was like, I've been struggling with the fact that I identify as straight, and I don't know how that fits in with the fact that I'm suddenly having romantic and sexual feelings for one of the members of my cohort that was a woman. And now, thank you. Like, that's helpful for me to know it doesn't have to be separated into these columns. So that night, several members of my cohort came out to me and said, you're actually not alone. I'm not straight. And actually, I'm realizing that maybe I could come out a little more in life. And they're educators, so maybe I can come out and make that a little more of my narrative, part of my narrative as an educator. And then I went out beyond that and talked to several other people, women who were like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to use the queer label because I haven't been discriminated against. I don't feel like I'm allowed to use the queer label because I haven't explored that part of myself. I talked to women, including my mother, who for decades were like, I'm straight, and then suddenly were like, oh, I had this experience with a woman, and my God, I am. Turns out, I'm not straight. And my favorite was one of my very best friends who is a teacher at a high school in South Dakota in a very, very conservative area, who considers herself to be 80% lesbian and 20% gay, in her words. Or, excuse me, straight. That would be 100% straight. Math, labels, see? But she's married to a man, and she was an advisor for the diversity club at her high school, and she was like, I'm going to come out because no other teacher at this high school is out. And so she just happened to mention it at the end of one of her meetings, and she said, just want to let you all know, because I realized I haven't, I'm not straight. I consider myself bisexual. And then 2 other teachers at that meeting came out after that. In this conservative area of South Dakota. Like, bless her. Grateful for her. So labels can be so affirming, and they can be so life-saving even in some cases, but they can also be limiting, and they can be othering. But you ultimately have the right to choose. Where do I stand? Do I want to use the label? What does that even mean to me? I encourage you to keep having conversations. Stories are important. We need our stories. And these conversations, if someone comes out to you, I encourage you, or even just tells you, I am blank, ask them, would you mind, that part's important, would you mind telling me, what does that mean to you in your own life? I care about you. And finally, we need pride. We need pride. We need pride. And, part of that wall is because we need to say, hey, these voices that are not straight, not allosexual, not alloromantic, not cisgender, not, all the things, they need to be elevated. And hopefully someday we don't need these labels, we don't need that wall. But until that day, happy Pride!
Beautiful. Thank you, Kat. Thank you so much. Happy Pride. Woo! Woo! Okay, two really brief announcements, or at least one. Just a reminder, there is the bowl at the table with the flowers on it for a wild card drawing. So if Kat inspired you, Andrew inspired you, Huli, or just the theme, or just Pride in general, then write your name down and drop it in the bowl, because after our fourth storyteller speaks, which is Spencer Hugh, then we will do that drawing. So, yes. Okay. I can't think of the second announcement that I wanted to make, so I'm going to introduce Spirit. No. No. Spencer, I'll introduce you. Okay. Oh, I remembered. So at that table, there are also Venmo cards. So if you want to support Laramie Pridefest, as well as Wyoming Equality, and just like the LGBT community in general, then you can take a screenshot of that, or like take a photo or something. Technology, I don't know. It will like link you to, I think it's Linda Devine's Venmo, if I'm not mistaken, and then she will just direct those funds to Laramie Pridefest. So events like these and more can continue happening here in Laramie. Okay, that was the announcement. All right, Spencer, sorry, it's your turn. Spencer is an occasional maker of things and a hard thinker. They have a piece of paper that says this is the case, and that he has achieved a BA or BS in philosophy. He's not actually sure which and didn't care to check. They are from Thermopolis, Wyoming, and Southern California before that. Among the things they make, photos, video, writing, and coffee stand out the most. His dream is to have a graduate-level course taught about his body of work someday. His hair and white shoes make up most of his personality, and they generally can be found thinking about making something, napping, or complaining about how hot it is. Spencer Hugh.
Hey everyone. Thanks for that intro, Rose. It's really, really good. I wonder who wrote it. All right. My earliest memory of thinking about who I am, and not even really thinking hard about what that question could mean at the time, was a memory long ago of a much younger Spencer telling his dad very adamantly that he was an American. And I am. This is a memory that I don't think about very often because I've actively spent most of my life trying to avoid ever thinking about my past in relation to my racial identity. Sorry, I'm so nervous. And to be honest, this memory communicates something much deeper and darker than it might seem, because as innocuous as the memory as it is, what I realized with the intimacy that I have with this memory, looking back on it, is that it wasn't like I was a weirdly patriotic young Chinese boy trying to assert his love for his country, but rather I wanted to be able to say that I was something other than Chinese, which is also what I am. So you can stop wondering what brand of Asian American I am. Also, my family were from Taiwan and then Southern California before that, so you don't have to ask that either. Yeah. To be honest, in microcosm, this memory does really perfectly represent the dynamic of me and what I want to be versus me, the Asian American, and all the expectations that come with that. I'm like totally spacing. All the that come with that. Yeah. Because at every point in my life, it's always been the case that I just wanted to be me, whatever that meant at any given period of time, and I'm sure you guys can all relate. As I am so sorry, guys. You know, do you mind if I look at it? Okay, I'm gonna look at it. All right, guys, I got this. For myself, at every age, it's always been the case that I've felt like I was at odds with my racial identity. Either I could do what I felt steered into my racial identity, or I could do what steered against it. But either way, I was never being myself in a vacuum, and I'll never know if concerns and questions like these have made up more about my identity than I have. In my last year of college, I went to a screening of The Black West, a documentary that was actually produced on campus here. Tasha Mitchell, one of the people who produced it, is actually here. You can see her through that window right there. The documentary was just about young people's experience of being black in Wyoming, and one particular story really stood out to me. This guy named Darren White, he was a former student and a former student athlete here. He told this story about how he would always go out of his way to sit in the front of class and really try to be as studious and attentive as class as possible, because he knew that there was an expectation on him as a black student to maybe not be that way. And hearing him say this kind of like totally broke my brain, because what I realized is that I was the exact same way, but in reverse, which maybe isn't the best way to say that. It's not a great sentence. But instantly I started to recount all these stories. I mean, I recounted all of my past, having a really flippant attitude about my academic performance, and how I always tried my hardest to look as uninterested and as unengaged as possible, unless the thing at hand was like something I actually immediately wanted to do. And genuinely, I was this way, but the reason I was this way has everything to do with the fact that there was an inverted set of expectations on me, right? Because as an Asian American, I think everyone expected me to be extra studious and, extra diligent when it came to schoolwork. And I think this is a clear case of, realizing that it was me, but it wasn't a case of me wanting to be me manifesting, but rather me wanting to be anything else manifesting. And ultimately, right quick, I just want to acknowledge the irony of me going to this documentary and learning this about myself, because I had missed so much class and I needed extra credit for African American studies. So I thought that was pretty funny. Ultimately, it feels like you either steer into the wind or you steer from it. You might just be thinking this entire time, why don't I just ignore these expectations? And I can understand thinking that. But the problem with that is that with something like racial identity, it's like this giant asterisk that's over the top of any decision that you ultimately decide to make about yourself. And it's also the case that I don't just deal with, my relationship with societal expectations isn't just this external thing, but also internally, I am a part of the community, and I do have a relationship with my racial identity, and that's something I struggle with too. When AAPI hate came into the mainstream conversation, I started to feel a guilt that wasn't at all new, but more intense than ever before. As a mostly straight, mostly cis person, I try to keep my broadcasting about my own activism to a minimum, because I don't ever want to intrude on a space that I don't have any claim to. But for the first time, it felt like the space was mine, and I didn't quite know what to say. I can't speak for the entire community because we're not a monolith, and in reality, I can only speak to my own experience. But in the face of this, I felt like I finally did have something that I wanted to say and that I was going to say it. What does it mean for me that to act courageously as an individual always meant feeling cowardly in the face of my community? And what did it always mean to represent my community heroically that it felt like straying from the self? You either steer into the wind or you steer against it. Before I say what I'm about to say, I want to acknowledge that being racialized in this country is socially dehumanizing at worst and systemically dangerous at best. But reflecting upon this, what I've realized is that nobody forms identity in a clear and uninterrupted way. Honestly, I don't even really know what that looks like, but through my experience, I've been forced to realize this. Knowing this, I want to ask us to be radically empathetic to one another, realizing that we are all just fractured amalgamations of our subservience or rebellion to the expectations and the things that are out of our control. 谢谢你们. Thank you. And let's do our best.
Thank you, Spencer, so much for sharing that story with us. You're much taller than me. We are going to do the wild card drawing. I think there's one name in there. So I don't think it's a surprise to the person who put their name in there, so much as it's going to be a surprise to you, unless there is anyone last minute who wants to put their name in there. I'm going to make a really brief announcement to give you that time, so you can pretend you're going outside and then put your name in if you want. You can do whatever. I am really excited about tonight. This is the first Tales of the Taphouse of 2021. So, yeah, I think it took a little extra courage from the storytellers to be in front of the mic, in front of this crowd tonight. So let's just thank them again. We have another event in the lineup. Hopefully, maybe one or two, one in the fall, one in the winter. We'll see where life takes us at that point in time. But in July, on July 29th, we have another event, and we've partnered with the Campfire Initiative, which is a new organization to Albany County, and I think you're going to be as excited about it as I am. The Campfire Initiative's mission is to build a safer community within all male identities through education, storytelling, and community engagement to eliminate gender-based violence in Albany County. And that, yeah. It's a big goal, and it's a needed goal, and just be excited that people are doing the work here to make women and men and everybody safe. So Bob Vines, we're gonna hear from him next month at Intermission, and you're gonna find out more about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and potentially how to get involved. They're launching their own series of storytelling, so we're kind of introducing them next month, and the theme is Man Up. Play with that one. And anyone in the community can tell a story, any age, any identifier, the mic is here for you. So think about that. If you're interested in being a featured storyteller, email me at talesatthetaphhouse@gmail.com. 6:30, July 29th, venue to be determined. Okay, that was my long, brief announcement. Okay, it is going to be a surprise for whoever put your name in the bowl, because we have two now. So, you want to pick it? Transparency here. Who is it? Okay, we think it's a R-Y, Ray, R-E-R-Y. Yay! I am happy to introduce to you our impromptu storyteller, Ryan. Take the mic.
I never thought I would be thankful for public speaking classes. All right. Uh, so my name is Ryan. I'm a 22-year-old trans man, recently moved to Laramie. And I guess warning before I start, I'm probably going to talk about a few heavy topics. I might very briefly mention suicide, so please take care of yourself. So a very good friend of mine once told me that you're never going to get anywhere in life unless you learn to disappoint your parents. The particular way I chose to do that was coming out as trans, specifically non-binary, and because I'm an expert at good timing, I did this right after the first time I tried to kill myself. I was 13, and all I knew was that I was going through puberty, and I hated everything. My body was changing, which you've all heard of, and it was bad, to say the least. And I didn't know why, because I grew up in a very small community of about 3,000 people in Eastern Oregon, which is a very conservative Christian area for anyone who doesn't know. And it was LGBT stuff was very much something that was not talked about. In fact, I didn't find out about LGBT identities until I went to a mental hospital when I tried to kill myself. So that's a great place to learn about that. You can imagine my family was a little bit shocked when I came out gay, but we just kind of rolled with it, and I said I'm going to use they, them pronouns. I'm non-binary, this is what I would like to do. And again, it very quickly became, we will not talk about this, trademark, and we're going to ignore your pronouns. I was lucky enough to manage to get them to change my name, at least. I'm obviously not going to say my dead name on the stage. But that's the basic decency you can expect from the people in my former town and my family and my area. And for a really long time, it was really, really bad. I moved away very briefly to college. I tried to kill myself about 2 more times because I had no support system. And I'm sure that sounds very, very familiar to some people in the room. And if it does, I'm very, very sorry. And you deserve to have a support system. As I grew up and I grew a little bit older, I clung to the non-binary identity even though no one was paying attention to it because it was kind of all I had. I knew something was wrong, but that was the only words I had to describe it. And if you haven't grown up in a conservative Christian background, you have to understand how difficult it is to go against the grain of that. I knew non-binary didn't fit, but that was the safest trans identity I could choose at that moment. Because if I had come out and said I was a man, there would have been problems, significant ones. Probably more than we're going to ignore this. A really good example of more ignoring it and the values that I was receiving from my family, I have one other gay member that I know of in my family. She is a lesbian who lives in California, and when I was first putting out my baby gay feelers to try and learn more, I was told that she became a lesbian because she was sexually assaulted and took a women's study class. That is not how you become a lesbian, for context. So as I branched out and I met more trans people, I started to become a little bit more comfortable, particularly in the online space where I knew none of my family could see it, to start asking questions. And I met the friend that I talked about at the beginning of the story. He is in his 30s, which if you don't know anything about trans life expectancy, makes him a trans elder. It's actually worse if you are a person of color in trans. I don't know the exact age, but it's bad, as most things are. And I started asking him how he knew he was a trans man. I basically was like, what's the thought process here? You know, how do you know? Because I knew that I liked being called sir, and I knew that I didn't like this everything. That's about all I knew. And he gave me a really, really good metaphor, which is being trans and not knowing about it is kind of like squatting in an abandoned house. And you've lived in that house your whole life, and it's broken, but you don't know it's broken. So when you first come out as trans and you figure out what being trans is, it's like you've painted the walls, okay? You still have holes in your ceiling, you have holes in your floor, and you have a cockroach problem and a rat problem, and your plumbing doesn't work. Everything's still broken, okay? But now you have nice purple-colored walls. And once you learn a little bit more about being trans, okay, so you might fix some hole in the floor, and you might fix some ceilings, and so on and so forth. And I thought, wow, that's a really good metaphor. I'm gonna ignore that for another 2 weeks. And because of that metaphor, I started putting out more feelers again in my family. And because I am as subtle as a brick to a face, they were not very good feelers. It was more like, I want to get a beard, you know? That would be neat, you know? How would you feel if I was a man, I never learned subtlety. And again, it was very quickly ignored, and we're not going to talk about this anymore, Ryan, please go away. And I was like, all right. And it took me a while, because again, I didn't have a support system, and I didn't have anyone around me telling me that this is okay, and this is something that you're allowed to feel. And eventually, when I was 20, I just kind of decided, whatever, I don't care anymore. And I came out to my family as a trans man, which was very exciting. And while they still very much took the route that is very traveled and decided not to do anything about it, I decided that I was going to do anything about it. I was going to do something about it because I was really, really tired of being tired and feeling bad all the time. So I started looking up doctors and doing all of the stuff that you need to do to start medically transitioning. And I was able to get an appointment. And in July, it will be a year that I've been on testosterone, which is neat. And when I made that first appointment, I talked to my dad, who's about the only one who's like, I got a 50-50 shot with him on whether or not he'll be good about it. He's good in that he supports me, but he's not going to directly do anything. So when I made that first appointment, I was like, do you want to come with me to the appointment? Because I have anxiety. And he told me no, and I was like, okay. So I went to the appointment, and then I went to the next appointment, which is the actual appointment where you get the shot. And I was like, would you like to come with me to the appointment? And he told me no. And I was like, okay. So I did all of it alone. And I continue to do all of it alone. And I'm fixing my house. I can think clearly, and there are no longer holes in the ceiling. I essentially became a one-man demo team and renovation team, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you know that there is something that will make you the most happy you have ever been, and you are alone, and you do not have a support system, sometimes it's okay to do things alone, because it is going to make you happy, and it's going to make you feel better, and it will be so much better by the end of it. And yeah, that's it.
Ryan, thank you. I think you had to have prepared that story. Beginning, middle, end. Led us right through it. Thank you. Wow. Before I jump into a short list of thank yous, I do want to encourage, all of you cannot fit in Coal Creek Tap. That's not happening. But there is an after party at Coal Creek Tap, and I do encourage you to keep connecting with community there and throughout all of Laramie. And the support system is waiting for you. Look for it. I love Laramie. That's why I've been here for 12 years, I think, now. So, yeah, reach out. Okay, my thank yous, yes. So I, first and foremost, thank you, storytellers, past, present, future. This event belongs to you, and you and your stories really, I'm gonna get emotional, so I made notes. You're catalyst for positive change and forward thinking, and you give our listeners an opportunity to cultivate empathy, and that can lead to taking action towards social change by simply being you and sharing. So thank you, and encourage people to share and keep signing up. So long as people want to tell a story, this event will exist. So thank you. And the volunteers, we're all volunteers here, I think. But specifically, thank you, Evan. Thank you, John. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Anita and Yasmin and Sydney. This really couldn't happen without your help, so thank you. And kind of a unique thank you to Seth McGee was a volunteer of Tales. He helped record stories, and he passed away this spring. And a friend of mine recently reminded me that how we choose to spend our time and give our energy is how we live our lives. And Seth gave to this community in so many beautiful ways, and I just want us all to thank Seth together. That sunflower over there is a representation of Seth, so I feel like he's with us every day. He loved Laramie so much. And that is it. My full gratitude. Thank you.